Welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 19. My name is Phil Edwards and I'm in Melbourne. I'll be joined in a moment by my regular co-host in Perth, Shayne Johnston. In this episode's feature topic, we'll be looking at IP telephony. So let's get the show underway now. And welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 19. My name is Phil Edwards and I'm in Melbourne. And as you can see to my right, I am joined by my regular co-host in Perth, Shayne Johnston. Hi, Shayne. How are you?
Hey, Phil. How you doing?
Excellent, excellent. My Tech Opinion is brought to you by Aussie Tech Heads Web Hosting. For great hosting plans and support, visit athwebhosting.com.au. Now, for the listeners and viewers joining us for the first time, My Tech Opinion is a program that has a deeper look at a feature topic in each and every episode, and won't always be just the two of us. Where possible, we'll also have guests join us and lend their expertise and knowledge to help us unpack our feature topic. That said, our feature topic is just the two of us today, and we'll be looking at IP telephony and some of the things that are available or things you should think about on the market. So there's some formalities out of the way. Shayne, how's it all going on your side of the country?
Good. I've done some more online shopping.
Excellent.
I've got the Amazon bug. Been bitten by the Amazon bug. I went and bought a couple of pairs of business pants.
Nice.
And free delivery and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't get the 2-day shipping because I think they're coming from the US.
Okay, yep.
And something complete. Oh, no, it's kind of related. I bought a laundry basket.
Nice.
Also from the US. So that's coming in the next few days. What else? The green screen was last week.
A laundry basket coming all the way from the US.
Yeah. No, I probably could have gone to like Kmart or Target and got one, but it's not the same. I had the urge when I was not in a position to go anywhere. So, and I had my mobile phone handy, so I did what a geek would do, but I bought it on the internet.
That's exactly what Amazon want you to do.
Yes.
I've been buying stuff on Amazon too. Don't worry. So it is a bug.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it in our last episode, but I ended up getting my Amazon Prime membership for $29.50 for the year. So I'll just keep using them now because I just don't have to pay for shipping. So that's the main thing.
Yep.
It's all good. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a moment, but I was my most recent, since we've recorded our last episode, I was at a security conference.
Oh, really?
For work, and
junket.
Well, it was in Melbourne. I didn't have to go anywhere, so it really wasn't a junket. A lot of the people who were at the conference were on the junket, but it was interesting. There's two parts to it. There was the conference part that I was at, which was listening to a lot of speakers and what have you, and then there was the expo part of it. And the expo part, if you're in the security industry and we're looking at CCTV systems, you would have been obsessed with that expo.
Really?
There was the type of cameras that there were, anything from the standard, little 1080p type turret units that you get, or the domes, through to, night vision cameras on gimbals, and phenomenal. And the other one, which I haven't seen in use at the moment in businesses, it doesn't mean that it's not there, I just haven't seen it, was the entry gantries for buildings. So where I work, I have an entry gantry that I have to scan my ID card. These ones were face recognition ones.
Oh,
so it had like a tablet on a stand, and it will recognize your face and then open the gantry that way. I know that they're looking at using them at the airports.
Yeah.
And the other coolest one that they had a drone zone. So there's a few drones there from different companies. But the coolest drone was from one, it was a product called the website's Hello Nimbo, I think it was. and it was a security drone that was attached to the top of a Segway personal transporter.
Right.
So it had a unit that attached to the top that had a gyroscope and things like that. But if you're in, have a shopping center or a large warehouse or something like that, you can just let it go and do the patrols for you.
Oh, cool.
So yes, and interestingly, thinking that that's who's going to use those. At the Chadstone Shopping Centre in Melbourne, Australia's largest shopping centre, we were at the movies a couple of months ago, late at night, and I was waiting for my wife to use the bathroom and come out, and I'm looking down into the main shopping centre area, and they actually use cleaning drones.
Oh, okay.
They have like a giant Roomba. It's huge. It's huge, but it's a giant Roomba that just patrols the hallways and does all the sweeping and vacuuming.
All right, so like a flat thing, not like a
no.
stand-uppy
Look,
thing.
it's like it's like the you see like the street sweeper type things, like a mini version of one of those.
Oh yeah.
But it just had no one attached. It was just going around doing its own thing. So that's where drones are going to be the big thing.
Yep.
I think. So yeah. So but there's some stuff that I'm going to talk about in the from the security conference in a sec, because we did have some follow-up to not our last episode, but the one before that, which was talking about video games and violence.
Yep.
Daniel Olivares, who I do Geeks Interrupted with, and was also on our episode regarding podcasting, he sent through a link to a podcast, and I'm going to click the link so I know the exact name of the podcast, called The Cracked Podcast, which is a comedy podcast that's quite popular. Has been around for a long time, but they've recently done an episode, it would have been after we recorded ours, called Why Everyone is Wrong About Violent Video Games and Your Brain. And it says, as long as real life gun rampages go unchecked, first person shooter video games will be a major battlefront of the culture war. After all, today's new hyper realistic gun games must be causing today's hideous violence. But what if 20 years of perfecting virtual headshot tech dovetails with a drop in American crime? I'm not going to read the rest of the blog, but I will put a link into our show notes for this episode.
Yep.
So if you want to get another opinion on what we talked about in that video game world, make sure you have a listen to that. And at the security conference, I was in a session talking about, like, I'm in IT security. So I'm dealing with those sort of intrusions, and a lot of the discussion was about risk and all that sort of thing, and looking at your risk points and mitigation planning, all that sort of thing. But it was very heavily into physical security and talking about things, and there was a lot of discussion on counter-terrorism, which I'm just sort of sitting there going, "Oh my god, you would, if you just sat in that conference and listened to it, you'd think the world's stuffed." Really. But they were talking about the effect of as a small minor part, they were talking about effective video games.
Yep.
And that video games are used as I think we talked about it on the episode, but talking about desensitization and things like that.
Yep.
But what they find is that you're playing a video game, you shoot someone, they try and fight back and things like that. But in the real world, the natural instinct for people in the real world is that they go, "I'm in this situation," and they freeze.
Yep.
So some people go, it's actually easier in real life than it is in a video game
to shoot someone. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a bit eye opening, and I just went, wow, that's just a bit full on. So there was another link I did find as a result of it, of looking at a bit more about it. There was an article from The Atlantic from 2013 talking about, it's called Playing War, how the military uses video games. And the military actually provide either financial or intellectual property support to video game developers to make their games more realistic.
Oh, right.
And basically, the military are then going, well, we will use them for training scenarios because it's cheaper than using creating their own products.
Yep.
So a lot of the products that you like, some of the games you see are either adapted or used in actual military-based scenarios. So you can tell some of the realistic parts of the AI engines in these things.
Yeah.
And the other article I found as part of that was a book that's available on Google Books as an ebook, but it had some pages talking about a fact or myth on video games, and it says things like minimal violent myth: playing video games always isolates the child because he or she always plays alone. Fact: buying games that require 2 or more players will encourage socializing. Also, playing video games with a child will encourage family interaction. So there's some stuff that you can have a look at there. Let's have a quick look at one more.
While you're doing that, I had a chat with the psychologist again.
Yes.
Because I just ran into her at work and I said, thanks for the info and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things she kind of clarified where I think we might have been a little bit off the mark is in addition to people being predisposed to things like violence and addiction and all that kind of stuff, she said that there's always a trigger that kind of happens. So it's it's more complex than just someone being predisposed. There's things like they might have additional drug problems, they might have other family issues.
Yep.
And then there's a trigger in their life that may or may not be related that then kind of kicks off the whatever the issue is.
And I think when you're going into teenagers and particularly adults, obviously you have to let them make their own choices.
Yep.
But particularly with kids, if you know that there's trigger points, well, then that's up to the parent to monitor as well. So, like a myth says in this book, playing video games is a good alternative to watching television. Fact: parents should monitor video game playing the same way as they monitor television viewing.
Yep.
Perfect example. So just some extra reading for the listeners on that, some further discussion on the topic that we had in a couple of episodes ago on video games and violence and things like that.
Yep.
So there we go. What else has been happening
in my world?
Well,
just in general. I know that the other things that we're going to touch on are the Facebook, how the shares in Facebook have kind of plummeted.
Yeah.
Because that was a big thing in the news a couple of days ago. Yep. Did you want to get into that now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Facebook had their quarterly or their half-yearly earnings throughout the week, and they said that I had it highlighted. Facebook's chief financial officer, David M. Werner, said, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, total revenue growth rate decelerated approximately 7 percentage points in quarter 2 of 2018 compared to quarter 1. So they're still making money. They're still making a lot of money, but the growth of their revenue rate decreased.
Yeah. So they're not making it as fast as they used to.
No. No. They're still making it as fast as they used to. They're not increasing how fast they make it. Does that make sense? I think it's the revenue growth rate rather than the revenue rate.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the markets had a conniption and the Facebook value dropped 20%. That's basically what it is. It did recover a little bit. The fact is, Facebook will mature. They've got 1.5 billion active users, and across all platforms, I think they have 2.5 billion users on one of their products at least once a month.
Yep.
It's going to have to stop somewhere. There's only 7 billion people on the planet, and that's all people, not necessarily ones that are predisposed to using Facebook.
Yep.
So, I'm not providing investment advice, of course, but it's it's an interesting one, very interesting.
Yeah, they there's a lot of people still calling for Mark Zuckerberg to quit though.
Yeah, but he's a major shareholder. He doesn't have to if he doesn't want to.
No, so you
He,
don't
he
think...
will if he needs to.
Yeah, so you don't think the same thing will happen to him as it did to Steve Jobs, where, you know, the founder of the company gets kicked out?
It depends on how much control it depends on how much control he has. Because the thing was that Steve Jobs, I think, had diluted his shares to a certain level. So he could have been forced out. That said, you could actually argue that Steve Jobs leaving and then coming back to Apple later was probably the best thing for the company, because he took on a different perspective and then came back and then reinvigorated the company to a different level. So, you know, who knows on that. The thing that they did ask Facebook was, and they're saying no at the moment, but it seems to me a natural progression as a long-term thing, was that would they get into the web, the public cloud service business like Amazon have?
Yep.
So everyone would have heard, or most people, particularly if you're watching this program, will have heard of Amazon Web Services. They grew out of Amazon developing their own infrastructure to handle the traffic on their site. And they went, oh, we can offer this as a standalone product. And they did. And now they're killing it on that. And they're making a lot of money.
They're making so much money on that, they're able to make a loss on the Amazon shopping side of things, aren't they?
Yeah. Amazon had a record profit of about $2 billion for the last quarter. But Amazon plough their money back in. And you know, we all crap on about, Amazon came to Australia in December last year. No, Amazon's been in Australia for a lot longer than that. It's just that their retail offering has only been in Australia since December last year.
Yeah.
So, you know, and Amazon are going after government services in particular, and business services. And we did have an AWS issue a few months ago, and the amount of websites that were impacted by that was phenomenal. And so you realize how deep the Amazon Web Services product ekes into the infrastructure, because you don't see it.
Yeah. Was that the Dyn DNS thing, or was that the S3 bucket thing, or?
I think it was the S3 bucket. I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But yeah, a lot of websites went down because of the Amazon availability issue a few months ago. So they're saying, anyway, back onto Facebook, they were saying that, are you going to get into that business? And because of the amount of infrastructure you're building just for Facebook. And they've said no, they're looking to leverage that computing power to develop their AI programs. But I think that, and it could be too little too late if they decide to do it, but it seems a natural progression for Facebook. And if they wanted to develop growth in other areas outside their core business, they'll end up heading down that track.
Yep.
I reckon it's a no-brainer for them. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And if they're able to, if they do head down that market, will they leave it too little too late? And can they gain a share of the market doing that?
I think they already make, or at least they're well down the road of making their own networking equipment.
Yeah, and you know, that's supporting a lot of their own thing, and they will continue to do that. So, they've said no, but I reckon it's a no-brainer long term. So that's Amazon. The other thing that happened in Australian news was over the past week, there were announcement that Fairfax and the Nine network are merging.
Yep.
Won't go into a huge amount of it. A lot of Fairfax journalists are sort of saying the sky is falling, and you know, all this sort of stuff. And the Age or the Sydney Morning Herald will end up being just Love Island recaps or something like that. But I don't think it's that bad. From a tech side, the Stan service that we've talked about on previous episodes, that's a 50% joint venture between Nine and Fairfax. So in other words, it's going to be a 100% owned product as of the merger. And Domain, Fairfax started up Domain as a real estate portal for what have you, and then they separated that out into its own listed entity, but they retained 51% of it. So it'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling that they'll try and take it back under the one banner at some point. But we'll see, because there's a lot of leveraging they could do across multiple platforms for that.
So that site's obviously, it's a real estate site, and obviously it's fairly big. But having said that, obviously we all know that my house is on the market at the moment. The only websites that my house has been listed with is realestate.com.au and REWA, which is the Real Estate Institute of WA over here. But none of the real estate agents have gone with domain.
It's up to the real estate agent. It's like using Seek. You've got different options, and how much it costs to list that house on your product.
Yep.
I suppose the thing is have a look at what is in your area and do a comparison between domain and real estate. The agents might go, it's only worth listing on real estate because it's the area that you're in. People only really use that.
Yep.
Domain, might be heavily used in Melbourne. I mean, I look at it and do see some differences, but generally, depending on your marketing budget that you pay the real estate agent for, because of course, real estate agents don't do anything for free.
No.
They may choose to list it on both, but I have no idea what the rates are, but it's probably a couple $100 per site. So that said, I sort of have to, you have to list it on at least one these days.
Yeah.
I remember when I was buying the house that I'm sitting in right now, that realestate.com.au was really burgeoning in that market, but it was pre-smartphones, so I would get my listing printed out, and I would create a folder of all the different listings in the area, and I could take it around to go to individual houses. Now you just save it on your phone and go directly that way.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that sort of how big that has come up, and the reason why Fairfax split domain out was because at one point their domain by itself was worth more than the rest of Fairfax.
Oh wow!
So they sort of split that out that way. But yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens. A lot of radio stations will go in under the 9 banner, and the newspapers, and this is the big first test of the new media ownership laws that were put through late last year. So it's a bit different, I know, in Perth, because Fairfax, I don't think, have a newspaper, a daily newspaper anyway. But they do have a website, I know. But but in Melbourne, for example, you'll have 9 owning The Age, which is probably the second most read newspaper in Melbourne, and then they'll also own 3AW, which is the most listened to radio station in Melbourne by far. Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting times ahead.
So obviously Channel 9 at the moment must be doing well and has more money than it knows what to do with. But I remember a few years ago now, maybe even maybe 10 years ago or something, there was rumours going around that even Telstra were looking at buying Channel 9.
Yeah, so what happened with 9 was that the Packer family, James Packer, used to own the 9 network, and they sold it to a private equity firm, I think CVC Capital or something like that. He sold out to it for $5.5 billion.
Yep.
Now, to give you an idea of how times have changed, with the merger announced this week, they're valued, because it's a merger, it's not a take. Even though it sounds like a takeover, it's a merger because they're equal value. They're just going to be called 9, and the current 9 CEO is going to be there. But 9 was valued this week at $2 billion. So Packer sold out of it years ago for 5.5.
Yeah.
They did get rid of some print assets as part of that, so the value would have dropped anyway. But yeah, that gives you an idea of where the values have changed. The thing with 9 was that 9 was a distressed asset a few years ago, because what was happening was that with private equity, the companies borrow the $5 billion for the business. Then they roll that debt back into the business.
Yep.
So the business has to then pay off the loans, and then they pay out that debt when they then list it back on the stock exchange. The problem was that 9 wasn't meeting its obligations to pay back the interest on that loan. So the company that borrowed the money in the first place basically lost out, and Nine became a new listed entity because of debt restructuring and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So once they cleared out that sort of part of it, it sort of fixed a lot of the issues.
Yep.
But yeah, there was discussion of Telstra buying it. With the NBN coming along, Telstra were going to be getting out of the infrastructure business, and could, potentially look at doing things like that. I reckon that Telstra, it was a bit early for Telstra to look at that. They're splitting up, of course, to their Infra Co, or whatever they're going to call it, and Telstra Retail, whatever we know.
Yep.
Infra Co, or whatever the product's name, company's name's going to be, is, I think that'll be primed to buy the NBN.
Yep. And
Telstra may then go down a media arm, but I think it's well too early for that.
Okay.
And the synergies between, Fairfax and Nine would be great because, selling advertising across multiple platforms and, cost effectiveness, doing all that sort of stuff too. So, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
The other merger or the takeover that was approved this week, which we have talked about, was that Disney and Fox shareholders in the United States unanimously approved that takeover. So that's happening. Except for maybe a regulatory issue, which I think from all reports that they've taken care of all of that. That's happening. So, as little as my tip, and I'm going to be completely off the mark on this, that in the post-credit sequence of Avengers Infinity War Part 2, the X-Men will pop up.
Oh, right.
That's my tip.
Yep.
That's going to be the first hint, because, like, looking at it from a, there's two ways to look at it. There's the business way to look at it, and there's all the libraries and what have you. But from a creative perspective, Marvel gets back X-Men, Fantastic Four, and associated properties. They have been very quiet on their future slate of films. They've announced a couple, but they've been very quiet on the rest. Mm-hmm. This will be the first stage. Yep. I'll put money on it.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. That's my aim. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah. So and this isn't in the show notes, but I see that, and I think you guys talked about it last week as well, that with Episode 9 Star Wars, they're bringing back the Lando Calrissian, whatever his name was.
Yeah, so they've announced they're bringing back Lando for Star Wars, but they're also announced this week that they're bringing back Carrie Fisher.
That's going to be tricky.
So JJ has said, I think it'll be for a minor role, and it'll be a way to exit her out of the thing. Yep. But they've got unused footage from The Force Awakens that they're going to use it for.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. And there was someone else that's been... Kerry Russell, which I think I might have mentioned elsewhere, who from Felicity Days and things like that has been... is probably going to join the cast as well. So...
Yep.
And Mark Hamill will be back. Now, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Last Jedi, Mark Hamill, so Luke Skywalker dies in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
But, it's
big controversy.
Yeah. I should have waited until this film. But anyway, JJ's doing a massive course correction on this thing. It's weird.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, it'll be interesting. And in terms of the Fox Disney thing, Disney get the rights to the distribution of episode 4.
Oh, okay. Didn't they have that?
No, because Fox bankrolled the original Star Wars, and then with the amount of money that Lucas made off that and the merchandising, he bankrolled all of the rest himself.
Oh, right.
So Fox still had the distribution rights for the first one, so they get that back as part of it. So
that's right, because it was a weird thing. People used to say that the big kind of fanfare thing that happens at the beginning of the movie. Yeah, that one's different to all the others, because that one kind of rolls into, because that's where I also heard that's where the fanfare kind of came from. I don't know which I guess it's the Fox. Yeah, the Fox fanfare comes first, and I heard that the last note of that is the first note of the Star Wars theme.
Let's have a quick look. If Disney buys Fox, does Star Wars get its opening music back? Someone said, if Disney buys Fox, the Star Wars, and they go, for me as a Star Wars fan, it would mean that the series by episode 9 in 2019 might again open the way God intended it, with the 20th Century Fox fanfare with CinemaScope extension. So yes, it'd be interesting to see if they did that. I don't think they will. The episode 7 and 8 just had the Lucasfilm logo. They didn't even have a Disney logo there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
I think we're just so used to growing up with it. That's what it all was. Anything else to note before we take a very short break, Shayne?
No, I think we've done the Facebook thing. We've done the mergers. Told you about my little shopping my little shopping exercises. Just before we came on the show, I pushed my washing machine to its limit.
Oh yes, you texted me before the show. You were saying that you didn't. What happened? Tell us what happened.
It's not really exciting. I mean, basically,
I just wanted to. I want you to tell me that it exploded or something.
No. It's for the first time in a long while, I was just washing my bedding. So I put the doona in, put the doona and one of the blankets into the machine together. And on the doona kind of washing instructions, it says, make sure that you've put it in a machine that it's at least 3.5 kilos or something. And I thought, mine's 7, so I can whack something else in. And by the time it kind of filled up with water and all that kind of stuff, it had this kind of error. And I'm assuming that it was weight related, because when I took the blanket out and just washed the doona by itself, touch wood, it seems to be going,
And it's probably the water and it's soaked in and,
Yeah.
And if it gets off balance, it may explode. It may fly out the room.
Could do.
I know of washing machines that started walking when they were off balance.
Wow.
They'll start walking into the middle of the room. But fun and games.
Yeah.
Well, no explosions, thankfully.
No.
It would have been fun to see, but I just don't want your house to explode.
No, well, I mean, it actually hasn't finished. So I kind of just restarted the washing cycle. So
it could explode in the middle of the episode.
I might go out after the show, and I might go out into that part of the house, and I could be knee deep in water for all I know.
Wow, I want photos if it happens.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break though, and we'll come back with our feature topic. In this episode, we'll be talking about IP telephony. You're listening and watching, either way you choose, to My Tech Opinion. See you soon.
Bye.
And welcome back to My Tech Opinion. It is now time for our feature topic, which we're talking IP telephony. I think we started talking about this, Shayne, because, as has been the ongoing discussion, I've got my MBN going.
Yep.
And, I know, it's great. And I decided to have continue my home phone. And then once I had my home phone, I thought I'd over-engineer my home phone solution.
Yep.
So to go from there. So I think that the thing I was going to start up with was, for those who have no idea what VoIP is, let's do with what's VoIP.
Yep.
And I've got some articles I'll link to in the show notes. But VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. It's also referred to as IP telephony or Internet telephony and Internet calling. It's an alternative way of making phone calls that can be very cheap or completely free. The phone part is not always present anymore. You can communicate without a telephone set. VoIP has been named as the most successful technology of the last decade. So the VoIP that we've probably all used at some point, one or the other, is Skype.
Yep.
Plain and simple Skype. Which allows for a audio low. The quality that you need for a telephone call can be quite low quality, and it pushes it through directly from like a peer-to-peer type thing, or like the system will negotiate it,
Yep.
but it will go through to a peer-to-peer situation, and you can talk to someone anywhere on the planet very free.
So the quality's it's not the quality that's low; it's the bandwidth can be low.
Yes.
Yep.
And the quality can vary. So if you're happy with the quality of a standard telephone that you're used to, in fact, one of these, we'll move it in.
Yep.
Look at that, an old school telephone. Even still got the ADSL filter attached to the back of it. I've recently just taken this off my wall because I don't need it anymore. And I don't know what to do with it, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, so if you're happy with a standard telephone thing like that, you're fine. You can actually move up to, and if you've got to have a service that supports it, a phone that supports it. But one thing that we get used to these days is from the iPhone 5, I think, onwards, and then in a lot of Android, all Android phones have it now. I think the Galaxy S4, I think, or S5 had it, is HD voice. So some people don't realize it's happening, but you talk to someone on a mobile phone call and you go, wow, that sounds clear. Because you've got two devices and a network that's capable of it, of supporting HD voice.
Yep.
The VoIP telephony systems can support that as well. And a lot of radio stations for their talkback callers are actually moving to that because it proves to have a better signal out on the air.
Yep.
But why IP telephony, I think, is important for us all is that if you're in Australia, you're going to move to the NBN at some point. If you're going to have a fixed line connection at home, and if you move to the NBN and you are intending on, or even if you're not moving to the NBN for internet, but you intend on keeping a fixed line telephone at home, you will be going to VoIP. And we're back. As I'm espousing the benefits of voice over IP, the system that we're using, which is exactly what I was about to say, is a form of VoIP.
Yes.
And it shit itself.
Not a very good form of VoIP, obviously.
No. Anyway, the point I was saying was that if you are getting a NBN, that if you're going to continue having a fixed line, you will have a VoIP service, but you won't have to actually do anything about it. Yep. Because the hardware will be in there. But that said, you may want to do something about it, or you may want to take advantage of it. The real benefits, I think, with VoIP these days are probably in businesses where you have multiple in-dial lines and things like that. For businesses that, historically might have had to have paid $20-$30 a month for each line that they had, and they can reduce the situation.
Their costs.
Sorry?
Reduce the costs.
Yeah, reduce the cost really quickly. So it's been one of those situations where they can reduce that. For home usage, interestingly, looking at the plans available for voice-only NBN, it's actually about as expensive as having a standalone phone service, but really you've got no choice.
Yeah.
So it's like long term, it's not going to be much choice. My NBN service costs $99 a month, but to have the VoIP phone service is only an extra $5. But if I got an NBN based voice only service, it's $30 a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Aussie Broadband sell it for, let's have a quick look. And I use Aussie Broadband because I use them as a provider, but I know other providers are similar as well. So
not as good as Aussie Broadband, though. Aussie Broadband are the best.
Everyone's crapping on about how good Aussie broadband are. I believe that they're pretty good too, so don't get me wrong there. $35 a month, and that doesn't get any phone calls included.
Really?
Free calls to other Aussie broadband customers. That's about it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, there's some plans that you're better off actually signing up for an internet service, really, and going from there. So, in terms of the technology, we said that, you've got Skype,
Yep.
Which is purely software-based. Then you can have a SIP service, which is, the advantage of a SIP service is it allows you connected into whether it be the software that you choose, the hardware that you choose, and things like that. So it's basically the protocol, and then you can choose whatever you want. It's like having an email server, and you can choose the mail client on your phone. You can use Outlook. You can use Lotus Notes. Who would use Lotus Notes? I don't know. But you get my point. You can choose whatever you can do. Well, yes. So, you've got those opportunities. And then if you're in a business context, you may want to go for a hardcore VoIP-based exchange service. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can do hosted exchange, and that means, hosted exchange is a Microsoft term. Hosted PBX is where the PBX is all run in the cloud, and then you hook your phone up to a line, or you can have an on-premises PBX, which gives you more control, but obviously that you got more points for failure.
Yep. So
it goes from there. The one thing that people can do that they don't realize is that, let's go back to the Skype option.
Yep.
To start off with, you can buy a telephone number, an Australian telephone number for Skype.
Yes, you can.
It's not cheap.
No, it's not.
It's $6.50 a month.
And if you forget that you've got it, they just keep charging you for it.
Yes. And I think you can pay up $55 a year or something like that.
Yep.
But the advantage is you log into Skype, and that includes, logging in on your mobile phone, logging in on the desktop app. You've got a phone number there with you at all times.
Yep.
And the great thing about VoIP, and it's a good time to bring that up, and this goes across multiple VoIP plans, is that, my laptop making noise. Anyway, one of the great things about VoIP is that if you are a traveling person, so you might be wanting to run a business that you need a phone number, but you're either traveling interstate, you're going overseas, all that sort of thing, you can set that number up and take calls on your local phone call number wherever you are.
Yep.
Now, there is a downside to that advantage, and that is telemarketers from overseas may buy a lot of Australian VoIP numbers and start calling you, selling you investment stuff directly from those numbers.
Yep.
And I get a lot of them.
Yeah, or people pretending to be from Telstra.
Yes. Telstra Internet Technical Support.
Yeah.
I got them the other day. So, but yeah, so the advantage of that is, so if you wanted to, work in Paris and run a business out of Melbourne, you could use that for that service that way. If even for the one that's commonly used is that you might have a local call number for each state. So you might have one for Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and it will be based out of Tasmania. So you've got some real good advantages there. You don't have to be location based. So there's a real cool advantage from doing it that way. And yeah, to receive, like if you're using roaming on your mobile when you're overseas, if someone calls you on your mobile number, you've got to pay for that roaming charge.
Yes.
If they call you on a SIP line, you don't have to pay the roaming charge. Yeah, you cost you data.
Yeah.
But you might chuck a different SIM card in. There's all different options that you've got that you can use for that. So there's some real advantages from using a SIP service.
What I did when I was in the States last year is I got a Skype in-dial number, one that was Perth-based,
Yep.
and I diverted my Perth mobile, or my mobile number, to that number. So then when people call my mobile, they then I just noticed that there's a couple of extra things on the screen. Let me just move them.
Yeah,
Didn't notice that.
that's all right. We had a little technical issue.
So as I was saying, people can ring my mobile, not knowing that I was overseas and all that kind of stuff. It would then divert through to the Skype number, and then it would ring on my mobile using the Skype app.
So if you're diverting from your mobile to a Australian landline number, let's forget about how you've got it set up. That's what you're doing. Is there any diversion charges on that, or is it because you've got an unlimited plan it's included?
It would depend on your plan. I mean, back in the old days, the diversion charge was like 5 cents every 30 seconds or something from memory. But a lot of the plans now, the diversion charges are absorbed.
Cool. So there you go. Have a look at your plan to see what the diversion charges are like on that from your from your mobile number. Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely worth having a look at that. So in terms of what we're getting from a NBN home perspective, there's two pieces of terminology to have a look at. And where is my little link that explains what that is? Here we go. So we'll take a step back a bit. So say, for example, you have you want to use your existing legacy home phone, but as part of a VoIP service.
Yep.
You can do that without a problem. But what you need to be able to do is convert your VoIP line into a digital IP signal. And the tool that does that is I clicked on the wrong link in our notes. You need to have what's called a device that has a FXS port. Hang on. No, it has to have an FXO port. There we go. I've got the terminology right, which is called a foreign exchange office, which is not exactly what I thought. That I knew what an FXS and an FXO port does. What it actually stands for was not what I expected it to be. So the foreign exchange office. So what it does is it's got a device, and we'll show you on the screen now. So I'll get you to swap over to our sharing, Shayne. So what we've got on the screen now is, this is a Cisco adapter. And what we've got on the screen here, and you can see my mouse, which is good. So we've got, this is a purely an FXO device. So you plug your internet connection in here, and this outputs 2 phone extensions using normal phone jacks. So this little doover here turns a normal phone into a VoIP phone. And you can set up all the settings in here and off you go. Fantastic stuff. Most modern routers, particularly ones that are being sent out with NBN services, they include an FXO port in the back of it. So if you've connected to the NBN, you'll get a modem and you plug it in, and your phone will work off that. The downside to it is that all of the cabling in your house may not work. You can get that done. You have to pay a charge for that to get it all redirected, but it's a bit of a pain in the neck. But you can do that, or you can hook up a wireless phone and go from there. So yeah, it's cool from that perspective that you can do that. And the good thing about it from a lay person who doesn't know what they're doing is that, and I could have had this experience with Aussie Broadband when I signed up for them. I know Telstra do it, Optus do it. They will send you out a modem or a router, a wireless router to use in your house, and you plug your phone into the back of it, and it's pre-configured just to work for you.
Yep.
So for the most people who just want a home phone line, they don't want to stuff around with settings, do all that sort of thing, it will just work. Next phase is to go up to something like this.
Yep.
And then you can configure your own thing. I'm looking at a website that I buy stuff from. And then I'll show you another one that is on here. And this is a... where are we? Now, I think this is... No, it's not one that I was looking for. This is always really good visual visual stuff on this. Now, has this got what I think it's got in it? We don't know. I wasn't prepared for this little bit, even though I'm going on this tangent. So there's the FXO ports that we talked about, and then there's also the FXS ports. So the cool thing about an FXS port, which is this one, and we've got a picture on the back. So this one, and some devices will do both. So I think I'm just completely not doing this right. But anyway, so I think that's an FX... No, that's a standard adapter. But there's ones that have got an FXS port. We'll go off the screen sharing for the moment, Shayne.
Yep.
That what it does is it can actually convert your phone line into a VoIP line.
Okay.
So it can go the other way around. So what you could do is if you could have a phone line go in, put it into a VoIP line, and then it can spread over a number of different phone areas. So the advantage, there are some advantages in doing that. In Australia, it's going to be increasingly less needed because of the NBN, and there won't be analog phones.
Yeah, back in the day before the NBN kind of was around, and I was on ADSL. I used a company called Engine.
Yes.
And I think we got them in the show notes, and that came with a little adapter where I would plug in my regular phone into this adapter, and then that would then go into it would go into the router, but there was also another kind of like it was a fallback line, I guess, that went into the regular phone line. So if the internet went down, I still had, it still worked as a normal phone.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is that you can keep your phone, and any incoming calls onto your phone number will get routed in through that adapter and out to your phone. But if you made a call, it would detect that you're making a call, and it would divert it through the VoIP service, so that you so it avoided the charges on your standard service.
Yep.
So that's the cool thing about these little tools, is that they can then start spinning around different, like they can start routing things to react to the way that you want to react. And for those people who have used a PBX at work, the same rules apply. If someone calls the switchboard number, we'll say, 1-800-0000000. I don't know who owns that. It will push out to, it can push out, say, only go to reception, or it can go to any phone in the organization. But if someone calls your specific desk number, it routes it through directly to your desk.
Yep.
So the tool actually identifies where the calls are going to and coming from, and actually splits it out that way. That said, most people don't need a PBX for home.
No.
I might, but it's just me. I don't really, but I'm just being, a nerd.
Yeah.
So, so in terms of day-to-day use, you can use that. The other option that you can do is that you can move to having a VoIP phone, which plugs directly into your router. And
let me go back to the
in a second.
Yep.
We'll do that one. So you can go to a VoIP phone. Yep, if you want to jump across. So I'm just showing a couple of different ones here, but you can have a VoIP phone. Most of these are designed as business phones, but you can have a VoIP phone that that you can plug directly into your network, set the settings up on here, and not have a standard analog phone anywhere.
Yep.
So it comes down to, I mean, you can get a basic VoIP phone with no color screen there for 105, and you can go anywhere right up to, like, and this is a particular model. This is Grand Stream, so there's heaps of different ones around. But you can then go to a video phone with a camera and everything with soft buttons, and I think it runs on Android for $400, $300. Now you go, well, that's not a lot of money, but then if you're in a business and you've got to buy a few of them, it grows pretty quick.
So it's not just as simple as buying one of these devices and whacking it in your router. You've got to have the accompanying kind of VoIP provider.
That's right. So you've got to have an accompanying VoIP provider, and you've got to be able to want to set these up yourself. So what I'm running at home, and in fact, I'll go back and show you. So what I run now is I have a desk phone, but I also have a couple of these in my house, which is the Grand Stream wireless devices. So I've got those paired with the base station. Now, the cool thing about these is USB charging. So they've got a dock, but that's a USB, micro USB. And then I also have the base station. So this is going to the next level. So if we click on this, we might get there. No, come on. I thought it'd actually link to it, but it doesn't. So if we go here, so I have this as well. And the cool thing is you buy this separately, and then you can add add up to 4 handsets to it. So you can make that scalable and have them all having their own lines and everything. So a traditional like dual handset, when you've got to get a cordless phone that has 2 handsets, you have to, it's all sharing the one line, where these can all have their own, individual SIP lines and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, so they're actually separate extensions.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So what I'll do, if I can... So what we've got here is my little phone. So you can see here that I've got my account set up. I've got 2 handsets that have their own user ID, which is the internal extension. They're connecting through to a single SIP server, and the individual settings are shown right there, how they work. And you can set up the handset settings, and you can set the profile. Here we go, profiles. So yeah, you can see all the different profiles and what have you set up there, so that they can connect in. So this is where you want to, if you want to get to the point where you configure all this yourself, you can do that. But it comes down to how confident you are and how far you want to get into this sort of thing. I do this because I'm interested in the IP side of stuff, but also like I'm doing work at the radio station, and we're looking at putting one of these phone systems in to talk about, do stuff on air and that sort of thing. So it comes down to, how much of a nerd you want to be. But these devices will connect into a SIP service, no problems, and you're all good to go. The next phase that you might want to get to is looking at a PBX software. And the great thing is these days is that PBX software, there's open source PBX that a lot of systems are based on. And the most popular one is Asterisk. And you can install this as a server, and you can get this going and actually have a fully functioning PBX in your premises, in your house, that you can do things like voicemail, call recording. Obviously, you want to look at the privacy concerns of that. You can have on hold music that you choose. I have some very cheesy Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass on my hold music. And you can do all, that sort of stuff. The cool thing about Asterisk is that it is really, really not resource intensive.
Yep.
To the point that I'm running this Asterisk server, and I'm running it on a $35 Raspberry Pi. And a $35 Raspberry Pi for home use will handle probably about 15 to 20 concurrent phone calls.
Oh,
If you wanted it to. There's hardly any going through here, of course. But you can do whatever you want. And if you wanted to if you're looking at setting up a PBX server for a small business, you could run it on an Intel NUC, a really low spec Intel NUC, or mini PC like somewhere in the vicinity of a Celeron processor, and it would run very happily, 30 phone extensions without a problem. And you can even see here, so you can see there that there's a bit of spike in its usage, but it's without a problem. Raspberry Pi's got a 1 gigahertz, 1 gigahertz processor, I think, with 4 cores. And it's only got 500 meg of RAM or something like that. It runs it without a problem. In fact, for a home setup, you could run a free PBX server on a Raspberry Pi Zero device. The only issue with that is I would not recommend running it on wireless. I'd look at running it on a fixed line for stability. But, here I've got some extensions set up. This is just some testing that I've been playing around with. So my 2 phones are primarily, I've got a desk phone here in the study, and then I've got 2 wireless phones, and then the other ones are just playing around stuff that I've done. I'm looking at doing a doorbell type thing. But, you've got the Aussie Home trunk in there, a SIP Talk trunk, which I'll talk about in a moment, and that's just a test trunk that's not even enabled. That's disabled at the moment. No.
So that stuff that you showed us before with the Grandstream phone stuff,
yes,
that's all to configure the actual handsets and the functionality on the handsets themselves.
So there's 2 parts to it. You can either configure it directly with a SIP provider. So you can put in your own, like, directly into your SIP service settings, and it will just talk directly to the SIP provider. What I'm doing here is that I have the SIP service set up so that it actually comes into the Raspberry Pi before splitting it out into the phones in the house, so that I could use this to do conference calls, transfer calls to other people. Within the house, I can use it as an internal phone system, all that sort of thing. So you were going to say?
Yeah. So the main number, like if I wanted to ring you, and one of those phones was to ring, am I ringing a VoIP number, or am I ringing a PSTN number, which then gets converted into the VoIP in your network?
So no. So you've, in this particular situation, because I'm on the NBN, you would be ringing a number, my old PSTN number that's been converted at the exchange level into a VoIP number. So I'm not converting an analog signal into a digital signal here.
Yeah.
I could have done that if I wanted to, but I was always holding out for the NBN because I knew I'd go to VoIP there anyway.
Yep.
But you can do that if you want to. If you want to set up the extra leap of hardware, you can do that. You can use the Raspberry Pi PBX. You can go to, or you can just have the phones configured, which I've closed the configuration. But you can configure this either connect into your SIP server or connect it out directly into the real world and connect that way. Yep. So it's up to you. I started playing around with this because I use I've now got the home system on there, but I also use a service called SIP Talk. We talked about direct in-dial numbers. SIP Talk, not that they're not a sponsor of us or anything like that, but they've provided me, they have a service that's free and you only pay for what you use. And then if you want a direct in-dial number, you pay like $1.20 a month for it.
All right.
So I've just paid for that, and I'll probably use it for work purposes, even though it's currently disabled. So so Raspberry, like, you know, the Raspberry Pi. Let's have a look at the dashboard. It wants to load. So yeah, I mean, you can see the statistics that are there. I've got to upgrade a couple of modules and things like that. But, you know, and there are, like, most of it's free. There are probably some modules you want to update yourself. And there are plugins and add-ons and all sorts of things that you can do with it as well. So, you know, there's plenty of options.
Yep.
But yeah, like, this is a really cool, like, yeah, there's commercial implications to it, but this is a really cool hobby type thing. You know, it's really cheap point of entry if you're doing it for home. Play around with it and off you go from there. The one thing I will warn users is that from what I have read, is that if you want to have your own home phone pushing through an Asterisk service, not every company will give you their SIP settings.
Yep.
So, you know, Aussie Broadband, I think TPG, iiNet are happy to do it. I've been told that Telstra will not provide you the SIP settings.
Yeah, bro.
They just refuse to do it. You have to use their hardware if you want to have a home phone, which I'm not interested in. But, you know, I like to make things hard for myself. So there you go. So there's that. We might as well stop the screen sharing for the moment. It's a bit hard to show because it's all text and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
On there. So you've got those options. So there are different plans. Engine, as you mentioned before, Engine's still around. You can get a SIP plan for $30-40 a month with many providers, and you get unlimited calls in that. And if you're a business, it's great. You know, you might want to call a lot of mobiles, that sort of thing. You can go as a direct in-dial number only, pay $5-10 a month. There's a heap of different options there. MyNet phone's another one that's popular, and things like that. And then the next phase of it is I've got phones. I've got physical phones. Mm-hmm. But you can completely avoid the phone altogether, as we talked about Skype, but there are another software around, such as like VOIP. What else? There's a heap of free ones around. I've got a link that I'll include on the show notes. But there's VOIP, Xlite, Wengo, CuteCom. What else is there? Firefly is another one that's around. There's a heap of SIP things out there, and you can just have that installed on your computer. Whether, you know, there's some of them are, like VOIP is available for Mac as well as for Windows. You can type your SIP settings in. You can use your computer as a phone. And the thing is, in corporate environments, and we were talking about this before we came on air, Shayne, is that if you look at Skype for Business, also Cisco's Jabber client, they're avoiding the hardware aspect of it.
Yeah.
And there was a case study that I read from a firm in Australia a couple of years ago. They have staff that are they move around a lot, and they're working out of different offices all the time, and when they're talking clients' offices and things like that, so they're heavily reliant on mobile phones. They decided to move to a Skype for Business hosted PBX solution, and they're expecting to get a return on investment because of the reduction in phone calls in about 6 months.
Yeah.
They got a full return on investment on the whole project in 60 days.
Oh, wow.
So for businesses, you can see the advantage to it.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, they, like, the thing is, I like, you can set up a free PBX or an Asterisk-based solution wherever you are, but you got to manage it. Whereas the good thing about hosted PBX solutions and things like that is that, it lets someone else do all the hard work for you.
Yeah. It's like with web hosting. Do you create your own page from scratch, or do you just get a WordPress site?
Buy a theme or buy a WordPress site, all that sort of stuff. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of a business perspective, we talked about, Skype for Business. Skype for Business has had weird names over the years. There was Microsoft Office Communicator, which itself was an enterprise version of Microsoft Messenger.
Yep.
And then they decided to call that Link.
Yep.
And then after a while, they decided to call that Skype for Business.
Yep.
And now they're getting rid of Skype for Business and they're incorporating the Skype functionality into Microsoft Teams.
Correct.
And then you were telling me before that Cisco have Jabber, which is their desktop client.
Yep.
And then they're changing that to something else.
So where I work, we've moved over to Cisco phones. The main advantage that we had with them is that before we did the move, we had NEC phones, and if someone at the Wembley office wanted to ring someone at the Bentley office, we could only ring the reception, and then they'd have to transfer through. Now that we've all got the Cisco phones, we can just ring people directly. We either ring their full number or just their extension, and we're all kind of on the same phone network. And to accompany that, we use the Jabber clients, and the reason why we went with Jabber and not something like Skype or any of the others is because Jabber's a Cisco product. Yep. It kind of, it's more compatible with the phones we're using, so you can receive calls using your Jabber client, you can make calls using your Jabber client, you can start a call on the phone and then you continue with it on your Jabber client. I could be here at home and then take calls on my mobile phone because it's got a Jabber kind of app on it, and it'd be like I was at work.
Absolutely. And I know that with my work, where I'm a big government organisation, so we're a bit slow moving at times. We were trialling Jabber as a telephony solution for a part of our mobile workforce. And that meant I could bring my laptop home and just log directly into the system and have my work phone at home. Yep. It's really good if you've got people who are working outside the office.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, I showed on the screen before there was, desktop clients. Now you go, well, the phones are $120 to $150 a piece for a standard SIP phone. And you go, well, then I've got to roll them out amongst 30 of my office staff, and it's going to cost a fortune. It does. The cool thing is that a lot of businesses have old school ISDN or PSTN based PBXs on site.
Yep.
And I think the NEC systems can do this because where my wife works, they've done this, is that the PBX actually had the provision to chuck an IP card in the back of the PBX.
Oh, right.
So they were able to move to IP phones by buying one expansion card, chuck it in the back, and they don't have to do any, reconfiguring of any of their hardware on site. It's all ready to go.
Oh, cool.
So there is configuration from the SIP aspect of it.
Yeah.
And you need to do that. The thing that people also need to remember is in a business environment, in a home environment, you're fine. You'll have enough bandwidth. In a business environment, you need to have the bandwidth to go over the internet.
Yeah.
For multiple concurrent calls. So two things. One is, do you either A, go to a separate internet connection specifically for telephony? And if your business is heavily reliant on internet telephony, like VoIP lines, then you're probably better off doing that. The other option is quality of service.
Yep.
So if you've got a SIP server or going to a certain address, get someone to set up the QoS on your network so that it will prioritize that traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it will eke out a portion of your bandwidth to make sure the phones are going, so that if some idiot on the Wi-Fi decides to download a 10 gig file, it doesn't swamp and degrade your phone systems.
Yep.
So that's the thing to be mindful of in that.
Yep.
Now, come with a VoIP, there are issues. There are inherent issues that come to come with that, and that is power. And I think we're getting used to this because of NBN.
Mm-hmm.
But power, if your power goes down, you lose your telephony.
Yes.
Now, there are some caveats to that. You can have UPSs that keep the system running and things like that. But if you've got a widespread power outage in your area, it may be one of the pieces of equipment may stop, one of your internet nodes from actually accessing that information. So even if you've kept power in your premises, your phones may still not work.
Yep. Yeah, if your internet goes down, then you're snookered.
Absolutely. So so you can there are things that you can do, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And more so for people who in a home environment who require phones for emergency services, then you need to look at having other options available. And these days, mobile phones are the way to go.
Yep.
So there's and I'll include in the show notes, but NBN have a article called "What Happens in the Event of a Power Blackout." And in fact, if you're on their fibre to the premises network, like you are, Shayne, you're probably more likely to be able to keep your home phone going than you are on other things. Yeah. There was another article I saw that was cool. Before we continue, I'll finish off with this. So, was there anything you wanted to add in, Shayne? I've done a lot of talking and rambling on.
No, the only other thing that I don't know if I explained it properly, because you asked the question about Jabber and Cisco, and it's got different kind of iterations. So, yeah, we're using Jabber at the moment. The IT team, which I'm a part of, is trialling a thing called Cisco Teams. Don't know how they got away with calling their thing Teams when Microsoft calls their thing Teams as well. But that was called Cisco Spark previously. Yep. And that's going to be a collaboration thing as well. It's going to, at the moment, it does desktop sharing. You can kind of do it's got its own chat client. You can do, it's going to incorporate video conferencing as well, because there's a thing called Cisco Teams, and I think the other one is called Cisco Meetings. Yep. And in the next couple of weeks, all the different packages and the different solutions are going to kind of come together, and I think it's just going to be called Cisco Teams. I don't know if the Teams or it's the meeting name that's going to continue on, and it's all going to be incorporated in the existing WebEx solution as well. So Cisco is the parent company, and they own and they have WebEx, which is a long-standing kind of
collaboration tool.
Yeah, kinda. It began life as more of a kind of video conferencing, sort of like Zoom kind of is. Yep. What we're using now and this is probably a good point where should we make the distinction between more your video conferencing software versus your VoIP software, because there's a little bit of overlap.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of like video conference, and you're right, there are overlap, and it also depends on how you use it. For the show here, we use Zoom. Zoom.us, I think, is the website address.
Yep.
So you get a conference code, and you can log into that and access that. And WebEx effectively does the same thing.
Yep.
And then what service is available depends on how much you pay, of course, as well, because you can have direct in-dial numbers for your conference centres and all that sort of thing. So you've got those those options, but really they're designed for people to join. Whereas the VoIP side of it, you can leverage conference capability off it.
Yep.
But it's usually as like an add-on or a side service or add-on functionality. So, whereas the IP type stuff that we're looking at, you can have some video included and that sort of thing. But really, we're focusing specifically on replacing existing PSTN, plain standard telephone number or whatever it was called.
Public switching telephone network, I think it is.
I think they keep changing the name. POTS is plain old telephone service.
Yep.
PSTN is the technical term. And then, whereas this is replacing that, but adding that extra functionality of how you manage the calls and get it through and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So, what we're using to do this is a form of VoIP, but it isn't necessarily pure VoIP in the SIP trunk sort of way.
Yeah.
But it adds to that. So, we're all using it if we realize it or not, whether it's configured on your end or if you call a business, chances are you're calling, particularly if you're calling like a call center, they would all use VoIP.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yep.
In terms of the pros and cons, very quickly, the pros are advantages of VoIP. Low cost. You can get a heap of SIP trunks. You can get a heap of calls included. It's a competitive market. It's not hardware based, and you can move the services quickly. So that's good. Portability was the other part of it, which is what we were saying. If you needed to move office, you can do that. Lots of features. So you can have their feature rich with, voicemail, conferencing, waiting, and all that built in. And you can have traditional phone and fax support through, the FXS converters. The faxes are always a bit weird, and it does talk about that you may have to adjust some settings on your fax to accommodate for that service.
So people under 30 don't know what a fax is, so that's right.
Yeah, I know. Bandwidth dependency, as we said before, you need to set out some bandwidth space for it, depending on how many calls you're having going through. You need to be mindful, depending on the VoIP service you use. I think if you're using a fairly renowned service, you'll be fine. But if you're using sort of one of those online-only tools, you need to be careful about your emergency numbers. Calling 000 in Australia, 911 in the US, will they divert appropriately? And if they don't, you need to make sure you know what you're actually doing in that case.
Yep.
As we talked about before, continuous power supply and internet, you need to feed power to these things to keep it going. So if my internet might work, but if the power goes to my Raspberry Pi, my home phone's gone. Mm-hmm. There's multiple points of failure, of course, in phone systems. So there's something you need to be mindful of. And you need to be mindful of voice and call quality. For the most part, the voice and call quality is better.
Yeah.
But depending on your quality of service, if your internet connection is not right, things like that, you may need to look at other options. So there's some of the pros and cons. Yeah, obviously, for most residential users, it's going to be a plug-and-play scenario. Yeah. And increasingly in Australia, a lot of people don't even have a home phone.
No.
There's no requirement to do so under the NBN. So you can decide what you want to do there and just move to mobile. Mobile, really, in terms of your inclusions and stuff, is probably going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And there's companies around at the moment that are providing unlimited calls and texts nationally, and like 2 gig of data for like $15 a month.
Yeah.
So you might be better off with one of those things. So yeah. So there's a bit of the pros and cons of that. So they're all decisions that you need to look at if you're going to go that way. The one thing I recommend is play around with Raspberry PBX. It's cool.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Plenty of tutorials. So if you do a search for RAS PBX, and you can find out a bit more about it.
Yep. So Asterisk is, like you said, the most common one, but it's not the only one. There's others.
No, not at all. There's other ones around. Some of them are proprietary. I think Asterisk is pretty popular because it's an open source.
Yep.
And so there's Asterisk by itself, and then Free PBX is what I use, which is a fork off that Asterisk. So it's like a fully packaged version. So I think you've still got the screen sharing there, Shayne.
Yeah, let's respect that.
So, for example, let's find a unit that's available here. So what we can see here is things like there's 3CX phone system software with up to 32 phones. They cost, $3,500. They're custom overlays on onto, I think, an Asterisk-based service.
Right.
So, for example, here, 3CS phone system professional with 128 probably 128 extensions or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 13 grand.
Yeah.
But then free PBX is not as, it's a bit more, like you can see that the interface there with all that sort of stuff's pretty cool.
Mm.
So you've got they've got all these bases on it. Asterisk is very simple, and then free PBX is a fork of that. That is, available as open source. And then going to the next stage, then Raspberry PBX is what I'm using, is a fork of free PBX designed to be auto-installed onto a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's worth having a look at. There's plenty of tutorials online, and you can go from there. The thing is that using free PBX is you're not stuck into an infrastructure, but you've got to measure that up against the cost to your business and what works and what doesn't. If you have got a number of staff, like not a huge amount, but if you've got staff that work in different sites, you could be better off with a hosted solution where all of the processing stuff is done remotely.
Yeah.
And you connect your phone into that remote server.
Yep.
So you can have all the advantages of the PBX without having to manage a thing.
Yep. So, given that it's open source, the PBX stuff we were just talking about.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I can't see a big kind of, multinational company using something like that. But just your normal kind of, maybe a real estate agent might want to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If something goes pear-shaped, other than kind of trying to work out themselves and Google it and all that kind of stuff, is there someone that they can contact?
There'd be local providers that will provide support.
Yep.
In terms of free PBX, you've got to make an analysis for your own business.
Yep.
Have you got someone that can support it? If they leave, what happens?
Yeah.
Is there a third party out there? Even on the so this particular device, and I'm not saying I recommend it, but you can do that.
Yeah.
So this device here is effectively, it's a Grand Stream, and I think it's got a version of Asterisk built into it, but you can run this as a hardware-based solution for your system. Oh. So this has FXS and FXO ports in it, so you can bring in your existing lines, you can push them out to VoIP lines, you can have SIP services in there, and you can plug in and play with that. That can handle, it's got 500 extensions it can handle. And then they've got bigger versions as well. So, you can buy services out of the box that will support all these things. So there's different options available. You just got to look at how critical it is for your business and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So, these have got, these can use existing phones and all that sort of stuff. So it just comes down to what your cost is, what you want to do with it, that sort of stuff that's available on that. So,
at a glance, they just look like regular switches. Yeah.
But they're actually PSTN ports.
Yeah.
So it's all software based really, and they've just got some hardware to back it up. So it's amazing what you can do these days. So there's plenty of options. You can go anywhere from a software solution to a hardware solution that comes from the individual provider. You can do a bit of hobbyist work. You can then go up to hosted PBX, self-hosted PBX, and then you can go to enterprise grade sort of level.
Yep.
That you're probably looking at millions of dollars worth of infrastructure. When you factor in handsets and all that sort of thing, but you may get millions of dollars worth of savings.
Yeah. So it's all about return on investment.
Yeah, it depends on your investment, and you'd need to do a needs-based analysis of what you're doing there and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So there's plenty of cool options. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think we've covered everything that I wanted to cover. We did the differences between your more traditional video conferencing stuff versus VoIP. Covered the free stuff, covered the corporate stuff, covered the hobby stuff. Yeah, no, I think we I think we got there in the end.
Awesome. So, short answer is, how much do you want to play around?
Mm.
And if you like the idea of fiddling and what have you with free PBX, do it. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do it, then go for a different solution.
Yep.
It's all up to you. So there you go. I think that's our feature topic. I'd love to hear from anyone who does any weird things with their home phones.
Yeah.
Because I'm strange, but I'm not the only one. If you look at the Whirlpool forums, there are plenty of people that run free PBX services, or Raspberry Pi PBXs at home.
Question for you.
Yes.
And this is probably I'm asking on behalf of one of the co-hosts of Aussie Tech Heads, Jordan. He doesn't know I'm doing this, but he's got NBN with Telstra, so he's got the Telstra solution, and he's ported his phone across. And he's a bit of a tinkerer, like we are. He's running with what's that router called? There's an open source router. PFSense. No, PFSense. So he uses PFSense, all that kind of stuff. Problem that he's having is that because he's doing the VoIP thing through Telstra, he's obviously lost all the functionality that he wants to do through the stuff that he's got through PFSense, because the Telstra router is the first device that comes in that hits the NBN. And then obviously that does the VoIP thing internally. Is there a way? Can he not port forward the ports that the protocol uses? I think it's port 5060 or something.
Yeah, he can. So I've done a lot. I did a fair lot of research on this.
Yeah.
If you're using Telstra for your NBN.
Yeah.
Now, does he use fibre to the premises, fibre to the curb node?
I think he's premises, but don't quote me.
Okay. Regardless of whatever he uses, there is no requirement from an NBN internet service. There is no requirement for anyone to use Telstra equipment.
Okay.
However,
yeah,
if you want to keep a home phone,
Telstra
will not give you the VoIP settings.
So that's the roadblock. He's got to get the VoIP settings or the SIP settings out of them.
And Telstra will not give them to you under any circumstances.
But they're going to be in that device somewhere there, right? Yeah,
but they will lock that information away. So unless you completely hack the device.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, look onto it in Whirlpool.
Yep.
People have found maybe some workarounds. Some people have got, the device sitting and not doing any routing function. It's just there from a phone function.
Yep.
The thing was that I decided that one of the reasons why I left Telstra was because I hate using Telstra equipment. I hate it with a passion.
Yeah.
I don't like using their routers. I just find them, it's great for their technical support guys, but we've talked about it on previous episodes. I use Ubiquiti Wi-Fi equipment. I've just shown you how I use my phone and things like that. Telstra, from my research, will not provide that to you. However, I've then found, through TPG, IONET, Aussie, whoever, you go, can I have the VoIP settings? And they have it on their publicly available information. They just give you the password and the user ID.
Yeah.
And everything else is, you can go off and go and do it.
Yep.
So that's where the issue is.
Okay.
He can use a different VoIP provider through the Telstra service.
Oh, okay.
And play around with it.
Yep.
But from a home phone, the number that he's got linked to his NBN system, they won't give him that information.
Oh, okay.
So yes.
Cool.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Telstra being arrogant.
Yeah, I guess. Well, they're not one of the biggest providers. They didn't get there for nothing.
Yeah, I know. Trying to hold on to their monopoly.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, that the reason why they do it, I don't agree with it, but the reason why they do it is they are trying to save themselves on support costs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because if you use their equipment, they will manage their equipment. They will provide support for their equipment. You know, it's like the 4G failover that they're providing in those devices now.
Yep.
If you don't use the device, you don't get the 4G failover.
Okay.
Well, I'll go without the 4G failover, so I don't have to use that nonsense piece of mass manufactured device.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's me complaining. So yeah, but have a look at Whirlpool. Whirlpool is a raft of information. There is a bit of whinging going on in there too, but there's a heap of other cool stuff in there as well. So always worth having a look at.
Cool.
So there you go. I think we've got done with our topic. If you've got any thoughts on that, if you think I'm wrong, if you think Shayne and I have said something incorrect, or you think that we're amazing, which I doubt it, but just saying that we're amazing.
Yeah. You
send us an email, mytechopinion@prosumerit.com. The address is at the bottom of the screen.
The other way. there it is.
Whoa. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back to finish up the episode in a moment on My Tech Opinion. And welcome back to My Tech Opinion. We are finishing the program off for this episode 19. As we said before the break, remember to send us an email, mytechopinion@prosumerit.com, which is at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on the video, or visit the website, prosumerit.com/MTO. Shayne, next week or next episode 20, we're going to hopefully have a guest join us.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about IT security, particularly around looking at penetration testing. So for enterprise solutions and developing or implementing application hardening tools and things like that. So we won't mention who our guest is going to be at the moment, but we are looking to have a expert come on and tell us about their role in doing those sort of things.
Yep.
So I know it's a topic that we've talked about offline before, but it should be pretty good.
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So that'll be episode 20 of My Tech Opinion. Remember to leave us a review on the Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts app. Anything will help us get noticed and get more episodes out there. I'm not even saying that properly, but we'll say that. It gets us noticed and helps us, reach out to more people and then get more feedback and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So make sure you do that. If there's any topics you would like us to talk about, mytechopinion@prosumerit.com. Again, we will talk about anything.
Absolutely.
I will crap on for hours about nonsense. That's just what I do.
It's a talent.
Oh, it's a curse sometimes. Always trying to... interestingly, so I do community radio, and I went to the local football game the other day and I did special comments. Now, I'm not the type of person that likes to do commentary on football. I don't think I'm good enough.
Yep.
But the bad habit I have, of course, is talking far too much.
Yeah.
So I was trying to go, I need to say what I want to say, but in half the amount of words.
Yep.
And that was the struggle, because I'm like trying to time it that I can say what I need to say before they bounce the ball again.
Yep.
But anyway, we got there eventually. So yeah, look, send us the topics that you'd like to hear. It'd be great.
Yeah.
So for those listening on the podcast, you can see our ugly mugs on the YouTube channel, so you can subscribe to that. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, of course, you can get the audio version of the podcast as well.
Yep.
For those who are listening on the podcast and might have heard me go quiet whilst we're showing something on the screen, sorry.
You should have been watching the video version.
Exactly. So anyway, we're going to finish up the show. Until next episode, Shayne, thank you very much for being a part of it.
No worries at all.
And I love that your green screen is still going strong in the background there.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, good investment.
Good purchase from Amazon. My name has been Phil Edwards, and in Perth we've got
Shayne Johnson.
See you next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.